Good morning, Bitcoiners. We're giving this a shot. We're seeing how it works. We'll see if the broadcast is strong enough, if the sound works, if everything happens. So it is a test broadcast, but we're going to do our best to do a version of the breakup. We'll do our best. We got a couple of Moscow time ones. We got some stuff to talk about. People are coming in. This stupid comment thing is still happening. I'm not getting any comments from any of the people in the waiting room, which is driving me nuts. Nuts, I tell you. There we go. From Minnesota. Sun is up. Coffee is on. Well, the sun is up. I got a coffee problem this morning because of the experiment. I'm not going to be able to sip any coffee with you. Aqualodge in the house. Good morning, Aqualodge. Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Hold on. Again, we're experimenting. Good Saturday morning, all. I don't know how this is going to work. I have no idea, but I've been meaning to try it. I think the signal is strong enough. Let me see what the folks are saying over on Rumble because this dumb thing's broken. Let's see what they're saying over on Rumble. Looks great, my dude. Thanks, CB. Thanks, man. Thank you. There we go. Yeah, people are coming in. It's working. Bomatan. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Thank you, CB. Glad it's looking good. Christine, nice to see you. Christine. Good morning from beautiful Roatan. Indeed, P-Man. Glad you're there. Nice background. Thanks, Habib. Thanks. We're trying it out. Good morning. Happy Saturday. Indeed. Morning sunshine. We got that. From the beach, how cool is that? Well, we'll see how cool it is. We'll see if it works. We'll see. I think it might. Good day. Sweet background, Enmity. Yeah, it is. We love it. Your thumbnail looks as nice as where I am. I bet it does. Roatan is a beautiful place. It is an absolutely beautiful place. Let me see what the folks are saying over on Rumble. Good afternoon, Sluggo says. Whoops. I got the volume on there. Okay. So it's working. Right? We're going to give this a shot. It's going to be a short one. More of an experiment. This is also the busier morning around here, so because it's Saturday, I think if I do this on a Monday or a Tuesday, it might work just fine. There might not be nearly as many people, and less noise. And it's a little windy today. If you're lucky, over here, you might see some horses swimming. They come and swim in the mornings here, so pay attention to there. If you see a horse swimming, it's what you're seeing. It's not imagination. You're seeing some horses swimming. All right, let's acknowledge the sun is up. We got a major sunrise on our hands. Bitcoin's running just fine. I don't have a coffee, guys. The experiment didn't permit me to bring one with me, but I beg you, drink your coffee, and we're going to talk about what's new. We're going to talk about what's new right now. Let's start with some fake news. We got a couple good ones today. Here's from the Daily Mail. So this is something they're noticing about catching COVID has made people less intelligent, with severe infections reducing IQ the most, new study suggests. a little bit of IQ drop. I haven't seen that anywhere around. This one's great. Marriage promotes white supremacy, according to white university professor. Not bad. And we got this one. This is our election credibility special. We have a special Moscow time focus. From now until election day, we're going to give you all the fakest news when it comes to elections. And this one's great. This is from New York Magazine. Have fun with this one, everyone. Here we go. Trump has abandoned an RNC voting by mail initiative. It could be a sign that he's looking to demonize mail ballots and replay his 2020 strategy with a premature declaration of victory on election night. So the whole point is that mail-in ballots are so good that the only reason why he could be stopping the mail-in ballots is because he wants to scam the election. Of course. So there you go. We're going to be covering all that stuff. Now, I don't have too much, I didn't prepare much today. I got a couple notes. So this is a shrunken version of the show. But I did want to talk about this Matthew Pines thread. So Matthew Pines, a speaker at Bitcoin 2023, and I think we'll have him back at Bitcoin 2024. He's a great Bitcoiner, always talking about the geopolitical and the macro, and he's really on top of this stuff. And he's able to think in terms of petrodollar and what's going on. And I think he's got sort of the scale of a worldview. To me, anyway, that sounds credible. He's not a Bitcoiner first, although I think he's ultimately a Bitcoiner, right? So I don't know if you're a Bitcoiner, I don't know if you're able to choose whether you're a Bitcoiner first or not, but it looks like his worldview is informed by Bitcoin. So he was talking here about a paper that came out called the Treasury Standard, Causes and Consequences. And this is a pretty neat paper. It puts a lot of historic things in context. It lines up, if you saw, I tweeted about it, it lines up exactly with the sovereign individual's worldview. The sovereign individual's worldview, of course, begins with the changes that came about as a result of the printing press and the advent of gunpowder and what it meant for the cost of violence and why you'd need national standing armies versus the old version of smaller lords who sort of had professional teams. An analogy I like to use to think about what the sovereign individual was talking about is sports clubs, right? We see in soccer, for example, or football, the European name for it. You've got national teams, right? You got national teams, but you've also got the club teams, and the club teams can hire anyone they want, and they don't have to be from that country, and it doesn't matter. There's all kinds of people involved. And one of the proofs they use in the sovereign individual to talk about this is that the old medieval armies, before there were national armies, didn't actually have national uniforms because no such thing was needed. Everyone knew, because these guys were professionals, who they were affiliated with. They had all kinds of regalia and insignia, which would denote which lord they were working under. If you took my content recommendation from a couple days ago and watched Shogun, you would notice as well, it's the same idea. The individual samurai are affiliated to the different daimyo, the lords, the houses, and it's for those lords that they fight. So the concept here being that professional soldiers in a club atmosphere had their allegiance to who paid them, and whoever paid them and whoever hereditarily they inherited this allegiance to was a really important factor. But they didn't require uniforms to know whose team you were on. That was not important because they were not anonymous. When it goes to the cost of violence changing, the funder of the war, the funder of the military became much more important. That's why you started seeing national standing armies. That's why you stopped seeing lords having private armies. Remember Magna Carta, right? The original legal document that sets the English world into motion. Magna Carta is really just a story about lords. That's where the House of Lords come from, which is the model of the US Senate, right? The upper house, the upper chamber. It was created before the lower chamber. It was created before the House of Commons, what we call that in the British system, or the Congress in America. The Senate was, or the House of Lords was first. And what the House of Lords was, and that's why they think of it as the beginning of the British legal system. What really Magna Carta was, and the creation of the House of Lords, was a bunch of lords who got together with their armies and said to the king, we'll kill you. We have enough people here to kill you. You do not have absolute power anymore. You're not an absolute monarch. You will share power and convene with us. And that's why they created the House of Lords in the first place. So Magna Carta was really one of the first instances of the separation of powers. And that's why it's seen as foundational in English world law. Now, that set in motion the medieval system of lords and standing armies and all that stuff. What Matthew Pines is talking about here is what we see in the sovereign individual, the time in which this changes and turns into the national armies. And he said, what I was talking about yesterday, that Bitcoin is really about ending the First World War. It's wrong what I said. In a sense, it goes back, according to this paper and according to Matthew Pines' analysis, it goes back to the 1500s, and that this tension was there before America existed. America just became the winner of this. They created the best mousetrap, the best war financing method. So indeed, there is a way to consider Bitcoin versus World War I still, because the system that we have funding armies today, the best ever created, right? The best ever created, the US financial system to fund armies and fund war. There's never been a better war finance system ever created than the one the Americans came up with. And that won World War II, World War III, we're in World War III. They're not going to win World War III. I mean, World War I and World War II is the ones they won. So here's what Matthew says, right? So he says, why are the dollar and US Treasury securities so dominant as global reserve assets? You might think it's just inertia or a lack of good alternatives, but a new paper by Dr. Hendrickson argues there's a fascinating and deeper story that goes back centuries. So Matthew Pines comes out with this summary thread. He says, Hendrickson says this treasury standard is actually the latest stage in a centuries-long process of states monopolizing money to finance wars. It goes all the way back to the military revolution of 1500 to 1800. So there is a big time period about when it takes over, right? And here's what he says, right? It goes all the way back to the military revolution of 1500 to 1800 that made conflicts way more expensive. Historically, states needed a money monopoly for emergency war financing. They had to prevent competitive currencies that could undermine this ability. But for it to keep working long term, they also needed money to commit to price stability and to maintain money demand. Over time, innovations like banking chipped away at the state's ability to fund wars by debasing money. So central banks emerged as the new financing tool, with the Bank of England pioneering a key strategy: suspend converting paper money to gold during wars, but promise to resume at pre-war levels after. This stabilized money demand while enabling way more war spending. But the interwar gold standard broke down and showed the limits of this approach. Bretton Woods tried to patch this by equating dollars and gold, but the system couldn't handle the fiscal pressures of U.S. foreign policy. So the treasury standard emerged instead. Now U.S. debt is the linchpin. Today, insatiable global demand for safe and liquid U.S. assets lets the government cheaply finance military spending by just expanding debt. Dollar dominance also enables a powerful sanctions weapon. But there's a big catch. The treasury standard structurally pressures the U.S. to over-accumulate debt to meet world reserve demand. That makes the whole system increasingly unstable. And excess use of sanctions could drive global surplus nations, aka U.S. adversaries, to diversify away from USD assets. The treasury standard system is way more fragile than it looks, and U.S. fiscal and foreign policy actually deepen the fragility over time, even as dollar demand seems unshakable. The treasury standard system is way more fragile. Oh, sorry, I already read that one. So he has two more here. He says that the paper describes the treasury standard emerged and evolved exactly as a flexible mechanism to provide emergency finance to U.S. government, recruiting / compelling foreign BS as extensions of our own. I don't know what BS in this case means. He might mean bullshit, but I'm not sure. But using your own debt as the foundational asset is the mechanism that creates a dynamic that cuts both ways. And indeed, it does cut both ways, right? And that's what we're starting to learn in America, that when we create this debt finance, we've actually subverted, in the end, because it cuts both ways, not just our wealth, we've also, and the rest of the world, we've also subverted our own ability to finance and create a strong military. And I'll tie this to the Boeing question that's going on these days, right? Boeing, of course, was one of these American companies that came to predominance because it had the U.S. military contracts, right? So in World War II, Boeing was able to emerge as one of these incredible companies that made airplanes for civilian use, but also helped go to, space. And I think Boeing had a lot to do with NASA and all that stuff. But here Fisher King is talking about what's actually going on with Boeing. Now, we've talked about this many times, but Fisher King says it exactly the way we've been talking about it. So it fits our bias, so we're going to talk about it. But indeed, I want to tie it to what Matthew Pine said about cutting both ways, and then we'll go talk about the Houthis and all that stuff after. So here's what he says. I can explain Boeing quickly. This comes from Fisher King 64. It attained a market-dominant position in the U.S. following the merger with McDonnell Douglas. This made it lazy. Then it got new management, which emphasized financial chicanery. This is the important part, over top flight engineering, symbolized by its move of the corporate headquarters from Seattle to Chicago. The financial geniuses that work to break the union shift production away from its trained Seattle workforce to places like South Carolina and outsource production of most plane components abroad. The American workforce was left to assemble all these disparate parts rather than produce them here. Software was also outsourced. The end result was, and now all of this outsourcing is because of the US dollar manipulation and this treasury piece, and it cutting both ways, exactly as Matthew explained. So here he says software was outsourced. The end result was lower quality of aircraft, delays in development and production, and even fatalities from crashes. The result assured the management in Chicago did very well, right? So this was all about financial manipulation. Meanwhile, by focusing on MBAs and JDs, so the MBAs, JD in America, by the way, if you don't know, is a Juris Doctor, it's a lawyer, right? Rather than engineers, top management fell victim to all the pathologies coming out of top schools. This is where the DEI nonsense comes from, which would have been much harder to impose if management were focused on building good planes than stock buybacks. So the outsourcing, cost cutting, diminishing the original workforce, all this is now working in tandem with a sort of diversity, DEI dysfunction visible all over corporate America. It's a feedback loop that could be fatal to Boeing and has already been fatal to some passengers. This is basically it. It's not an elaborate conspiracy. It's a tale of greed and dysfunction that you can see all over America. And I think he nailed it right on the head. The dysfunction that you see all over America. You know, Bitcoiners, you see a lot of people, this is a plot. This is a top-down plot. I think you can explain most of what's going on with Biden and the deep state with exactly as it looks like. It's greed. If you follow the money, you can see the incompetence layered on the greed, layered on the incompetence, layered on the greed. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people pulling puppet strings and evil people out there that we don't hear of, that we don't know. Clearly, there is an unseeable layer of control and influence in the world. One second. But I don't know if we need to even diagnose that. I don't know if we need to get to that point. We know that people's opinions are assigned, right? This is what Scott Adams is saying today about the Kennedys, right? About Robert Kennedy. So we understand now, since Kennedy's uncle, that we have not had civilian control of the US military, that the old compromise of national standing armies, but they fall under the purview of an elected official. The compromise we made to have these powerful national armies because we thought we could control them with the vote, that whole thing has been broken, it looks like, for years. Trump, of course, was never the leader of the free world. Biden, the idea of Biden being the leader of the free world is as funny as it sounds, right? But Trump wasn't either, right? Trump couldn't be. He was subdued. He was subverted at every single turn. That's why he couldn't build the wall. That's why he couldn't build... he couldn't really get the stuff done at the border that he wanted. That's why fentanyl still came in. That's why we still had trouble. If it was up to Trump and his capacity to be a commander-in-chief and actually be the civilian head of the military, how hard would it have been? How hard is winning the war on drugs actually? It's probably pretty easy, right? You've been led to believe that the war on drugs was a big failure, and it was, but not because we can't stop it. It's not that reason. It's been a failure because they've been complicit. They've been combined. They work together, hand in glove. The same forces that took Kennedy out made sure, just like Boeing moved to Chicago, the Chicago stealing of the 1960 election has made it possible for the Sinaloa cartel and the Arizona border to be directly linked to the Pritzkers in Chicago. Chicago still plays a vital role, not just in financial manipulation, but in the gangsters. That never ended. The Al Capone, all the organized crime that came out of Chicago never went away. It's still there. And they're still controlling from the background how the border is run, who's in charge of the military, and what actually happens. And it looks like the deep state has made all these deals with the cartels over years. And maybe the benefit for us is that the companies that America has in Mexico never get attacked, right? You never hear about American companies in Mexico getting attacked. You don't hear about the tourists getting attacked often, right? It does happen. But it's not like that. I remember when we were at one of the Satoshi roundtables, someone tried to buy drugs off of one of the people running the hotel. We were in Mexico, right? So people working at the hotel, you know, the people that you see cleaning up and all that. Hey, you got some pot, right? And the person looked at the Bitcoiner like, you're absolute psycho criminal. They kicked the person out. They tried to kick the person out. Now, do you think it's because of the morality of the person working at the resort? No, it's because their owners, the bosses, the people who run it are gangsters. And if they're out trying to steal business from their owners who are gangsters, guess what happens to them? It ain't pretty. It ain't pretty at all, right? So, I mean, I have no proof of any of this. This is just me trying to piece together what I saw when I was in Mexico during this time. Now, all of the stuff was available, right? People could buy it, but the way this person tried to do it showed who was in charge and what was going on. Now, there's a reason why tourists don't get attacked down there, because this is part of the system that's been used in Vegas, all across America. The gangsters get legit businesses to launder their money through. So this has been going on for a very long time. But coming back to the idea of civilian control and who's in charge and whatnot, right? Now, think about it, right? Since Kennedy died, we've had all of this mystery, all of this intrigue. Meanwhile, Americans have terrible chronic illness now, right? And that's what Kennedy is talking about, right? He's been going on about the chronic illness thing ever since Biden decided that the potato chips were too expensive and shrinkflation was the national travesty for more junk food. He's been talking about the highest chronic disease burden in the world, how much we spend on healthcare that's not to make us healthy, it's to help manage our chronic symptoms, right? It's $4.5 trillion a year. So imagine the corruption goes into the food as well, right? So here's the other thing. Here's what Scott Adams said, and then we'll probably wrap it up pretty soon because it's starting to get a little busy around here. He says, here's more evidence that media assigns your opinions to us, at least for politics. And he's talking about RFK. He says, if that were not the case, RFK Jr. would be leading the polls. This one issue, this food issue, is more important than anything the news is talking about. And I do mean more important than current wars, climate change, and race. But the news business is advertiser funded. So good luck to humanity. And indeed, you don't need to see, and we don't even need to understand about this bank and that bank and this gang and the Pritzkers and the military-industrial complex. It's all true, but you can explain it simply by the money. You can explain it simply by U.S. debt, which funds all of this mischief, being this desirable asset, which funds everything you see around you. The corruption of the food, the insecurity of the border, the insecurity of Americans. All of this stuff stems from the sword that cuts two ways, what Matthew Pine said, and the difficulty that we have managing any of this stuff because we have no feedback loop. We have no way to even diagnose our disease and unhealthiness because the money itself is sick. We know that as Bitcoiners, right? We get that. And that's why we're having a great time. It looks like we're winning. It looks like we're winning. It's the Jet Set live stream. Indeed. Thanks for that. You just woke up. Great, great, great. Well, I'm glad you can make it. As I said, we're not going to be doing a long one. This was more of an experiment. Bitcoin Deb says, greed, money printing, shoddy products, collapse. That's what we're seeing. Yeah. Quality of life has dramatically deteriorated radically from JFK until this very day. Dramatically worse and shorter average lifespan. It sure has. Now, we got to remember too, guys, you know, let's give a bit of perspective for a second as well, though. You know, as bad as things are, as bad as they are, right? There's still more than hope. As awful and diseased a thing as we created, we still did some things that made quality of life for some a lot better. You know, I don't come from any money. I was not born with anything. I had to work my whole life. I'm not saying you have to work, you get this and that. That's not what I'm trying to lead to here. What I'm saying is, for the average person, despite all the trouble, if you ignore it for a second and you realize Bitcoin exists, we live in a time of Bitcoin, we're in a position to live better than any royalty has ever lived. Ever. Right? Ever. And all of this that we're seeing and our capacity to manifest it in the world, to make heaven on earth, the pieces are all there for us. Everything is there. So although we did create a shit time, we still created a lot of stuff that we can carry forward with us. And I think we still can keep the trajectory of making the quality of life for everyone in the world much, much better. And we're not, I don't think we're going to leave people behind. I hope not anyway. But we got to remember, we're so close. My book that's coming out soon, The Bitcoiner's Guide to the US 2024 Elections, I think the whole point of it, as I get to the end of my draft and I'm revising it, I mean, that's kind of the theme, is that we are but a few steps away from realizing hyper-Bitcoinization and a made-in-America hyper-Bitcoinization, which will happen at a much larger scale than what we've seen from El Salvador. God bless El Salvador. We would not have had the roadmap to do this if it were not for El Salvador. But indeed, we've got the roadmap. We're going to do the American version of it. And it's going to change everything. It's going to change exactly what we're worried about, this demand for US debt. It's going to go away. We see now that the economics of war are changing so quickly that everything that we understood as foundational to the fiat system is washing away as quickly as time is passing, as quickly as Bitcoin is adding more blocks to the chain. We're getting that much closer. And I see it in this election cycle. I really do. And again, I think that the ballot question and what Bitcoiners can actually do to influence American perception of the elections and the engineering trade-offs, our understanding of decentralized systems, our mimetic knowledge of 21 million, not your keys, not your cheese, don't trust, verify, especially the don't trust, verify meme, armed with just that alone, I think allows us to teach Americans in general the nature of their reality, not just about money, the nature of their reality. And we can actually change reality in America in this election cycle by simply sharing what we know about elections from what we've learned from Bitcoin. And if we do that right, if we just do that one little thing, it sets a cascade of events into motion that cannot be stopped and will lead to instant 2024 to 2028 hyper Bitcoinization for America and then the world. We're that close. We are literally that close. 3 memes, 1 election, and we got it. It's that amazing. So we're going to win. We're going to win. Let me see what folks are saying quickly over on Rumble, because I like the Rumble folks who subscribe to my Rumble channel. We're trying to build up my Rumble subscriber base. So if you haven't subscribed to the Count BTC Rumble, head over to Count BTC. We're going to keep airing it on Bitcoin Magazine, but we like to build the backup system here, right? Sluggo, it's just football. CB Van. Fun to have the breakup on the beach. Good. Yeah, I'm going to see. Great seeing the breakup beachside chat. On Boeing, I also heard a long time ago this connector has a presence in every U.S. state for political power, aka jobs. Should be. Yeah. Louis XIV really got a raw deal. He sure did. He sure did. Yeah, he sure did. I'd say the Tsars got it a little worse, though. Same idea. All right, everyone. Beautiful view. Thanks. Hyper Bitcoinization Outlook. What more can we wish for? Peace, indeed. Live and in color from Barbados. Your daily breakup. Yeah, so maybe we'll try this again. You know, the ocean color there is intensely beautiful coral blue. Yeah, it's one of the best ones here. You're not even quite getting the right. There's still a bit of a gleam in it. You're not even getting the good one. I'm a little bummed you guys didn't see. I think the waves are too big. That's why you're not seeing. Usually Saturdays you'll definitely see the horses come swim, but I think they were shied away from these waves. Tsunami behind me. No, we don't get tsunamis here. We get there are tsunami warnings up on the coast, but we're a little protected in the bay that we're in. This is one of the least wavy bays on the island here. It's usually very simple and pleasant, but there's tide is high right now, so it's coming up. I can give you a bit of a look through the whole, if you can see it. That's the main town of Barbados over there. There's some amazing shit. There you go. There's some amazing ships out in port right now. You know, this is where we do most of the homeschool with the kids. They have this really great playground structure in that tree over there. You can see there's like a slide that my kids are in that tree like crazy. But this is where we spend most of our time. This is sort of across the street from where I am. I was telling you guys last year that I used to live in George Washington's actual house, which is amazingly true. We're literally across the road here. I didn't stay in that one this year because we have guard dogs at that house, and they were a little too sketchy for my kids. Not a big deal. I had to pick them up and carry them each time we came in and out, and the kids were afraid of them, and then all kinds of other stuff like that. So we moved to the neighbor house. It's perfect, modern, totally newly renovated, and all that stuff. So we're loving it. Okay, guys, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. We're gonna be back. Maybe we'll try this again on Monday. We'll see how the weather is and all that. Sometimes there's rain clouds in the morning. I'm not sure I can do this every morning, but I think the broadcast came through. If you can say in the comments how well we came through. The connection rate, I went around and tested connection speeds last night here, and I found a few spots that I thought would work. I think it came through pretty strong. I don't know. I'll have to watch the replay. But it looks like my signal was pretty strong. All right, team. Thanks for coming. Short one, but we'll see you all on Monday morning for another breakup. Maybe here on the beach. We'll see. Peace.